Hello, David. Good morning. Good morning. Who wrote that exercise? Oh, it's by Karl Tausig.
And Karl Tausig was a pupil of Franz Liszt, is that right?
Pupil of Liszt, indeed.
Yes.
That's right.
And can you trace your teachers back to Liszt, is that right?
I can, if I trace my teacher, 5 back, I come to Liszt, and I was amazed to discover that. And then, of course, just 2 further back, going 7 back, I come to the great Beethoven. And 1 more further back, I come back to Haydn. Of course, the hard thing is always being able to live up to this, but it does make you work hard. So Haydn, about 220 years ago, was teaching Beethoven, and Haydn wrote this piece which I'm going to play in my recitals. And it's one of his piano sonatas, one of his many piano sonatas, about 60 odds. Wrote a lot of those, and he also wrote, I think it was 77 string quartets and over 100 symphonies. A very prolific composer, all-embracing, universal composer. And he was a very good-natured man. You can tell this from his music. It's well-humoured, very level-headed, and this is part of it.
Now, you also play light pieces, don't you? But you were warned not to at the Royal College of Music, is that right?
Yes, well, I had this warning to steer clear of light music, and I never quite obeyed it, although I played mostly classical music in my life, but I have played some light music as well. And there was one notable occasion just a few years ago when I went up to London to demonstrate a piano. This piano had been played on by Paul McCartney, and the piano was being auctioned off for a very vast sum of money, at least £125,000. That was the reserve put on it. He eventually sold for £126,000, but Paul McCartney had played on this, and in fact he had the inspiration to play his song, his very famous song, Yesterday, on it. Apparently Paul, I have a picture of Paul here with the piano, and Paul was walking down the road, and he had a tune buzzing around in his head, and his friend, who was a lady here, she was a famous singer in her day, and her name was Alma Cogan, and Paul was walking past Alma's door, and he couldn't resist knocking on her door and asking for a quick play on her piano, and this is the piano. You probably can't see from there, but it's green in colour. Anyway, she let him in, and he played the song, and the Beatles recorded it, and so many people recorded it, it became a world famous standard tune. Anyway, what happened was, after Al McCogan died, the piano was left in the house of her sister. And just a few years ago, her sister decided to auction it, and they had an auction of popular music memorabilia, famous guitars played on by Eric Clapton and things like this, and trousers worn by Mick Jagger or whatever it was. And this piano was played on by Paul McCartney. There you see me playing it. I was giving the demonstration. You can see more clearly that it's green in colour there, a vivid green. And I played it, and the commission was to go up to London and play it as many times as they wanted. Well, I sat there playing it while people were listening, and I played this tune yesterday about half a dozen times, and then they said, well, what about some other Beatles songs? So I did one of the others. The piano was frightfully out of tune, in really bad shape. I personally wouldn't give it house room at home. It's a really nasty little piano, but it had been played on by the great Paul McCartney, and had also been played on by Liberace and various other famous pianists at the show business parties at Al McCogan's house. I think yesterday, and the other song I'm going to play will sound a bit better on this piano because this one's just been tuned.
straight and narrow. You've got a few concerts coming up. What are you going to play, David?
Right, I shall be paying a tribute to Eric Satie, the eccentric French composer who was born in 1866, so it's 150 years since his birth. And I have in the past played many times this famous piece that was used in the 1970s for a chocolate advert, a Bourneville chocolate advert. Now, it's everyone's favourite Eric Satie piece, but I'm going to steer clear of that this time. I'm going in for a major work that he wrote. And this was Sport et Divertissement, sports and pastimes, hobbies, diversions. And he scored this for piano with a narrator. The narrator reads some poetry, and the pianist plays these pieces that are to do with pastimes and hobbies. There's one about a firework display, there's one about playing tennis, there's one about, let me see, horse racing, and there's one here about golf. Now, I thought this was rather interesting. I couldn't believe this when I was learning it, bearing in mind that when you play golf, it's usually played by two people, and you start the game off, you put the ball on a tee, T-E-E, but of course you can also spell T-E-A. And this rather reminded me of a famous tune, and it goes like this. Isn't that reminiscent of a famous tune from the show? You recognise
Yes,
it?
T for two.
T for two, yes.
And is that your joke? Two people?
Well, I couldn't say, because then what destroyed the whole thing, I thought I made a discovery that T for two was written by Vincent Youmans for the show called No No Nanette, and the year of the composition of that was 1924. But this had already been written in 1914, and I just wondered, since he would use things from French folk tunes, like there's another one, there's a reference to Moonlight, and it goes. Which is a French nursery rhyme come folk tune, and I really thought that when he wrote this, that maybe this was derivative, or derived rather I should say, from the French folk tune. I don't know. It was written 10 years previously, so there's an unanswered question. But what is pretty clear at the end of the piece is that the colonel who's playing golf, who's dressed in green tweeds, a green tweed suit, and he's got his number 4 iron and he's just about to tee off. And this is the end of the piece. And you can imagine the ball floating away on its way no doubt to a bunker. So here we have this composer. I'd like to play the chorale that he starts the whole thing off with. And he says, I'm putting into it everything I know about boredom. Oh dear. I dedicate this chorale to those who already dislike me and withdraw. And he wrote this chorale, and it's not like a Bach chorale, it's got the strangest harmonies. Let's play it. Interesting, a bit weird really, but not surprising considering this composer was so irrational. He used to keep chimpanzees in his bedroom, and when he enrolled in Paris at the Paris Conservatoire, he signed up to have composition lessons and piano lessons. He went for his first piano lesson, and his professor heard him play and obviously wasn't that impressed, and asked what else he was studying at the conservatoire, and he said, well, composition lessons. So he wished him well with that and said maybe he should concentrate on the composition. And he went down, he left his piano lesson, went down the corridor for the composition lesson, and his composition professor inquired what else he was studying. He said the piano. He said maybe you should concentrate on the piano. So there's a strange fellow for you. The most notable thing I remember hearing about him is another composer, Darius Leo, was walking down the street in Paris one day, and the heavens had opened. There was an almighty storm, thunder and lightning, very torrential rain, and Eric Satie was walking along with an umbrella, but the umbrella was rolled up, and the other composer inquired why he hadn't unwrapped the umbrella and had put the umbrella to shelter him from the rain, and he told him he didn't want to get it wet. So there's a charming fellow for you. The other composer that I'm going to feature in a big way in this concert is Beethoven. And I'm going to play the famous sonata that is known as the Moonlight Sonata. Of course, there are 32 sonatas, and with the sonatas it always intrigues me how he would write them in a certain key, and then he would return later, many years later, to the same key with the same sort of idea, the same sort of figuration, but worked in a more mature way. For instance, the very first sonata is in F minor, and it's got an ascending arpeggio configuration. Many years later, in his maturity, Beethoven wrote the F minor sonata, opus 57, the Appassionata, and he wrote this. Again, a configuration of an arpeggio from the piano. It should be noted, the magic touch to it, the hidden secret there, that he wasn't writing this with the hands one octave above. There's no air of mysticism whatsoever. The left hand, instead of being there, is down there. So there's a missing octave in the middle, which could have been played. It's no harder to play it. You can play it, but by missing it out, he's making a very effective understatement. Beethoven doesn't make all his dramatic effects by violent means. He does in many cases. But Beethoven was a truly universal composer. He wrote his piano music, 32 sonatas. He wrote, I think it was 17 string quartets, 9 symphonies, 5 piano concertos, a violin concerto, the opera, the great opera, Fidelio. So he was truly an all-embracing composer. And when he wrote the so-called Moonlight Sonata, the one person that didn't know it was the Moonlight Sonata was Beethoven himself. He never ever was told this. Everyone else knows it as the Moonlight Sonata and has done ever since. The term, the title, was invented by one Ludwig Rellstab, who was a Viennese music critic. And he said that the first movement reminds him of Moonlight on the Lake of Lucerne. But the inspiration didn't come from Moonlight on the Lake of Lucerne or anything like that. The inspiration came from a Mozart opera written many years previously, Don Giovanni. What I want to do is I want to play a bit out of Don Giovanni, and then I want to just glide into the C-sharp minor sonata, and you'll hear the connection. would often return to the same key for a reworking of his ideas. In the piano sonatas, there's only one sonata in C-sharp minor. He never returns to C-sharp minor in the piano sonata. To find your return of Beethoven's ideas, you need to look to the late string quartet in C-sharp minor, where you find some of the same ideas being recycled in a more mature way. Now, obviously you're not going to hear the string quartet at this concert, but those two pieces need to be thought of as a pair. In the piano sonata, after the first movement, he writes his second movement, which is like a minuet, or is it maybe a scherzo? Between the two, faster than the minuet, but slower than the scherzo, and this is it. And it goes on like that. And eventually he comes into the last movement, which is all drama, and the violence really, and the beat ends up uncompromisingly, dramatically, and with no reference at all to Moonlight on the Lake of Lucerne, forget that one. So the end of the sonata, if I pick it up, it ends like this.